Oh, I can't drum any enthusiasm up for this. Honest to God, this story was so bad. It was unbelievably bad.
Oh. Captain Birdseye's turned up to give his opinion.
Oh my dear God, no.
Hello and welcome to a Talking About special, and we are talking about Doctor Who and the Legend of the Sea Devils. I am Paul Orpeebell with some terrible sunshine lighting, and I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James.
And hello, it's Jason.
And hello, it's Ben.
Yay, Ben!
Hey!
Slightly disappointed that we didn't get... Why didn't we get an ahoy there? It's James.
Ahoy there!
Oh, dear God. I've seen that eye patch before. You've had that out before, haven't you?
Or like clubbing.
Next, you'll be telling us it was Inferno in reality we're reviewing here.
Isn't it? Oh, damn.
Only it was.
James is like the 70s BBC. You just keep spotting bits of props turning up in random shows. Going, I think I've seen that costume before, haven't I? Anyway, who is going to kick us off on Legend of the Sea Devils?
Oh, go on. I saw Ben open his mouth then. Ben, do you want to sorry, Ben, I cut you right off. Do you want to go first?
Okay, I'll go first. Right. Previously, we talked about the trailer for Legend of the Sea Devils, and we're all very excited. Sea Devils were back. They look really good. We thought, oh, this has got lots of promise. And then we watched the episode last night. Well, unfortunately, that promise went out the window for me, I'm afraid. You could tell that it was heavily edited because basically it just sort of jumped all over the place. It had lots and lots of plot exposition sort of delivered at 100 miles an hour, especially by the Doctor, which went like this sort of thing. It's like, wait, slow down. And yeah, it was just, unfortunately, it was just a bit of a mess, really. As I said, the Sea Devils looked good, the costumes were very nice, and the effects were great, but the actual plot and the whole sort of just the whole timeline and the movement of it and everything was just, it just sort of jumped all over the place, and for me, unfortunately, it was very messy.
And that's a great summary straight away there. The Sea Devils were a thing of gorgeous beauty, and full marks to Ray and the team for having done a fantastic job, I think, in visualizing one of our more remembered villains from the past. However, that's just where the positive stops, because, I think bringing the Sea Devils back, they should have been much more front and center in the story. And they felt like a really wasted opportunity. And almost, I couldn't understand why they were there, and I couldn't really understand the plot behind what they were actually trying to achieve and why they were trying to achieve it, other than they just wanted to take over the world, and that was pretty much it. But there didn't seem to be any real reason. Could have been any monster, to be fair, but I'm glad it was the Sea Devils in the way that they were represented. But to follow up with what Ben's saying, the script was a mess. The editing was a mess. The sound mix was a mess. And quite frankly, for me, possibly one of the worst episodes of the Chibnall era so far.
I think the plot-wise, I mean, if you go for the plot, it is a terrible. There were lots of points where I sat and thought, I don't actually get. It's quite boring, but I don't understand what is meant to be happening here, and what's the peril, what's the dynamic, what is anybody trying to do here? The sad thing is, I know you don't want to repeat everything over and over, but if you look at the Sea Devils in The Sea Devils and Warriors of the Deep, the sort of payoff there is that they are the people who should be on Earth. They are the residents, so to speak. So the moral question comes at the end that you dispatch them, or because inevitably you do dispatch them. But the moral question is whether you should be doing that because they've got a right to exist in the same way that humans, if not more than, because they're older than humans and they have the planet before. This just felt like it could have been anything. Because I just said it didn't have to be the Sea Devils. There wasn't even that question where Doctor said, "Oh, can you not respect that these creatures have been here for millions of years and they're sentient?" And it was kind of like, and sort of the way sort of Dan just went a bit kamikaze and did the lot of them in. It was a bit like, well, that's very convenient. He's killed them all off. We don't have to question the morals, and he wasn't bothered by it. It just, the Sea Devils previously, same with Silurians, is that they were cerebral things. They weren't just invading the Earth. It was their Earth, and they had a reason to be there. And I don't get what the bugger they were doing on this. I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't get why just one of them was trapped in stone.
So that was the leader. So they were after the keystone, which was the little orange, yellowy sort of stone that turned up at the very, very end.
But the Sea Devils were around when the keystone was still there, though.
He activated when she cracked open the statue. He awoke. They were sort of like dormant, and he awoke them.
No, but when they were on the ship before, and he bowed before them, and they took him aboard the ship, and they kept him in stasis, they were all still awake then, and he'd given the keystone to the relative who swam away with it.
There's don't ask me to defend the plot.
No, I wasn't asking you to defend the plot. I was just trying to understand. I'm not attacking you for the.
Oh no.
I don't quite get that they woke up the Sea Devil guy at the start, which it just would have made more sense if they'd have woken them all up.
So there's two sort of historical things that are involved in this story, so which are actual historical events, which is the sinking of the Flot de la Mar, which was in the 1511, and then you've got the Madame Ching, who's in the 1800s. So those are two historical facts. The other guy, the guy that's what's his name? Yi Hung is made up, is just like a fictional character. So you've got the two historical things that are happening sort of 300 years apart. So you've got the Sea Devil there, and then there's a whole thing that's missing, and this is, I guess, going back to what you've just been saying, is because of the editing and because of the way that this has been done, there were chunks of this story missing, and whilst you get a lot of Jodie explaining everything that's going on around her all the time, you don't get anyone actually telling you what the plot is and how we've got from one point to another point, because you've got the Sea Devil back in the 1500s, and they take that ship, and that becomes the sort of ghost ship later on in the 1800s. Doesn't explain how the leader of the Sea Devils ends up being a statue. We just know it's got something to do with the keystone, but it doesn't actually explain how that happened, how that came around, what happened in between. But then there's loads. I found it really difficult at times because there was bits in the editing as well that, I was quite glad that they got straight into the action, right at the beginning. It wasn't sort of like, we're going to keep the Sea Devil reveal until halfway through. It was like, right, the Sea Devils are in it straight away. But then there was just little things like when they trapped the Silurian in the netting, there was no build up to it. It was just literally like 1 second, the Silurian, the Sea Devil was there, and the next minute they're hoisting it in the air on the rope. There was no build up to it. There was no sort of like, here's the plan or whatever else. There were things that happened that seemed to have no sort of build up to it, and then whole scenes where it was just Jodie narrating everything that was going on around them, which I kind of felt it should have been more the other way around. It should have, the scenes on the Sea Devil ship I didn't need everything pointed at and explained. Oh, that's a so-and-so oscillator or whatever else. I didn't need all of that. I wanted to know a little bit more about who on earth any of the characters were or what they were doing, not the bits that were, you know, I could see on the screen, if that makes sense. There seemed to be, it felt like an hour-long story had been cut to 42 minutes because they knew they were going to have the build-up at the end for the trailer. They wanted, you know, the phone call with Diane as well. You know, you had those sort of, it was like,
when the phone call came up and he was leaving a voicemail, I was like, oh, no episode fee for Diane. And then she turned up and I was like, oh, whoa.
Do you know what though? I was secretly hoping it would be his mother. I know we mentioned that on our trailer sort of review. I thought it might be his mum. I thought, you know, he might be saying, you know, I feel homesick, because quite frankly, Dan was ignored for most of this episode while the other two went off. And, you know, the Sea Devils, beautiful. Some of the setting, also beautiful. Some of the imagery, beautiful. The rest, I really wanted to love it, and it was, but
for not getting the plot over, which is a huge basic, I felt it strange that the story sort of stopped around half an hour, 35 minutes, and we just had 10 minutes of sort of après where people are just sort of, it had finished, but it was still bobbing on and people were just talking, and it was like, are you getting this to length, or this isn't it was so badly constructed. A basic story was what it needed. It needed a basic story, a basic power. It needed something where you could go, and the opening, fine. The opening absolutely makes sense. You got the lovely the mountain and the Sea Devil statue, great. As soon as it had opened up, it just went to tits. It didn't make sense. The Sea Devils weren't doing it. There wasn't like they're trying to revive the rest of their people. No, there was nothing discernible that they were trying to do. I mean, if they're trying to, why their leader got put in stone, but before and if their leader was in stone, would you not just get a new leader? I mean, if someone put Boris Johnson in stone tomorrow, we wouldn't go 200 years into the future to find another Boris Johnson. We'd just replace him. We'd move on.
It'd be a big booze up first.
There'll be a booze up, and the statue will probably go into a river somewhere. But it's just a bit strange. I don't know what the Sea Devils are meant to be doing. And then within that, you then have this sort of situation where you've got guest characters who I don't know what their motivation is. I don't know what their point is. I mean, Madame Ching, for COVID regulations, had got her own ship to herself that she was sailing with no assistance. I mean, it was literally the most obvious, it's COVID, we can't actually get any extras in to do this sort of kind of sailoring here. I just like, if you couldn't do that story on the scale you wanted to do that story, do a different story. You could have done a fishing village where they accidentally reactivate a Sea Devil colony, and the Sea Devils, you could have the coming out of the sea and the iconic kind of horror of that. It felt like the only action sort of sequence we had was that sort of one where the villages were all wiped out, and the little bit at the end, and the rest of it was just a lot of talking about stuff that just didn't make sense, like one of these videos.
It's almost like you could have had like a Scooby-Doo episode with it, because there was that point where the Sea Devil came in the mist on the ship, and that's what I was thinking of. Is you didn't need all the others. You could have just had the main Sea Devil that appears as, you know, as a legendary creature, trying to get them to do stuff. It does fall down because, you know, yes, COVID was rife at the time. They've got a very small cast. You know, they've leaned heavily into CGI. You know, so that in some ways people would say, well, you know, it's an amazing job that they managed to get it done. But like you say, the premise is, you know, the return of the Sea Devils after so long. And yes, they're beautifully created, but awfully used. You know, and that, I guess, as a Doctor Who fan, is quite heartbreaking in a way. It's like, you know, I hope they get to come back and get used in a better way. I can see on a storyboard, everything, all of these elements look beautiful, but because of COVID, because of production, because of the way that it's been edited and written, all those bits don't add up.
Yeah, and you can't get away from the fact that it is a COVID affected production. So, we'll cut it some slack there. They had to be largely based in the studios for the ship scenes. That somewhat lets it down visually because they're having to use such a large amount of CGI and such a large amount of sort of, getting some backgrounds in and some other things going on to try and keep the interest there. Madam Chin was supposed to have led 70,000 pirates in her day. And, to see her there with no pirates whatsoever on her ship, see, again, COVID ridden, I think it's you're right. I think the ambition here was to give us a good story, but it falls flat, I think, on the basic premise of the fact that perhaps it was too ambitious to do in a COVID situation. I also think that, you're right. We missed some very, very clear visuals here. They went to the beach. They did location work. We could have had sea devils on the beach. We could have had all sorts of things going on here just to give it a little bit of a lift. But it comes back down to it. Some of the episode had to pay off on some previous setups. So, towards the end, we had the Doctor and Yaz scenes being played out, again, at the expense of the story to a degree, because we're on 47 minutes tops here for full episode. And, you can just see where they've had to cut in the story to then give you the bits at the end of the episode as we lead into the Centennial special. I'd have rather more time spent in the episode trying to explain some of what was going on there, and a little less time of that sort of piece at the end of the episode that we could have played in during the next installment.
I think we've quite comprehensively discussed the Phasmin scenario previously. I didn't feel that it was any more convincing this time around than it has been previously. It felt so sledgehammered into, like Jason, it kind of like you had the script, then it stopped just for a quick, by the way, Doctor Who, I would love it if we could go on a date somewhere. And then Doctor Who, it's just like, oh God, would that be the moment you'd pick? I mean, there was just, it was just, and it's just really weird that TV Doctor Who turns around and goes, if there was going to be one person in the world I would ever want to date, it'd be you. Based on 3 years of quite zero chemistry between us. I mean, sorry, Sarah Jane, sorry, Chogra, sorry, any of the ones where I've genuinely felt that they are like a pairing that you could imagine having adventures forever. I'm sorry that having been just one of a run of 3 people stood behind me feeding lines, I've decided that you are the one that I would love for eternity, but I can't because I'm a Time Lord and it just wouldn't work out. Even though I've had a fiddle with Madame de Pompadour and I've had a go with River Song and all these other people that I've done, you're the one that I would, but I won't, because I've only got one more special left and then all this is going to tits and we're going to start again.
I felt there was more genuine emotion in the John Bishop scene, when he was on the phone to Diane and he was just acting on his own. I felt there was more of a genuine feel to that than there were, and I've made my opinion on Doctors falling in love with companions clear on a number of occasions. And when we reviewed the last story, I was like, how are they going to wrap this up and, to bring it in either the Daleks? And to a lot of people, that the coming out story, if you like, or from Yaz's perspective is important, and I don't want to take away from that. That is, I see a lot of comments about that, and I get that. I felt a bit like what you're saying, that it was shoehorned in. It's like, oh, by the way, we've got one episode left. We can't have a relationship. It's the foreshadow. It was a bit like when back at, sort of with David Tennant and Billy Piper, where she says, I want to be with you forever. And, all through like that final season where before she gets taken into another dimension, there's all that foreshadowing of, are you going to be with me forever? Yes, I'm going to be with you forever. Nothing's going to keep us apart. No, nothing's going to keep us apart. They're always trying to separate us. Oh, yes, they are. And you just know that something's going to happen at the end. And I just feel like this has been added in, sewn in at the last minute, just to add a little bit of emphasis towards the finale. If there was going to be this long arc of them having feelings for each other, as you say, where was that in the rest of it? Where was that in the rest of the narrative? Why hasn't it been more to it? Because there was a lot of people that commented, same as you just had people out around, well, hang on a second, the Doctor's had a lot more companions that had a lot more chemistry with the Doctor, so it felt like a really weird line to say.
I think with the Rose and Doctor thing, it's twofold really, as far as Rose and Doctor Who. Rose had Mickey, who was a rubbish boyfriend, and meeting the Doctor changed her life. And so I think that the way that played out was that the Doctor was the boyfriend that Mickey could never be, and Mickey did that. I could never compete with him. And the Doctor shows her the world, and you get the feeling that they are falling in love together. And it's not an overriding. It doesn't you don't get points there halfway through, I don't know, Idiot's Lantern, they stop and say, I love you, Doctor Who. Yes, well, I can't love you back because I'm a Time Lord. It didn't. It felt like they were just having that connection, and that's because Russell writes character and he writes people. Chibnall can't do it. I'm sorry, I know he's a professional writer and he's got a lovely career and all that, but he can't do the character. He just can't do it. And even watching this, it relies on an actor giving a performance to bring a character than it does the writing to give you something. It is so reliant on that. And I think Madam Ching fell flat for me as a lead guest, because there was nothing in that writing to give her a good character, and then nothing in the performance to lift the bad writing. So I felt it was a shame. I've sort of diverted on the points there, but it is just, I feel that it's lovely. If people take something away from anything, it's fine. You can take something from a painting, you can take something from a song. And if it means a lot to a young person who was coming out, that this is their only connection to someone coming out. But I mean, there are diverse dramas now. When I was a little kid, you had to watch Queer as Folk Lake at night and be shocked that that's what gays did. Now you can watch Emmerdale and there's gays. You can watch Neighbours and they're married gay. I mean, I appreciate that if you're a Doctor Who fan, you might only be watching Doctor Who in your bedroom, and that's lovely. But there is a hell of a lot of representation in the world now, and it is done better than this is done here. This feels, again, slightly like Chibnall sort of playing to the, well, give them the Sea Devils, give them the gays, and I feel like is it just a launch on trying to get someone to respond positively? And it's a shame, because if it was done properly, and if we'd had this instance where, say in the first episode, Yasmin had a bad relationship and she met the Doctor and it was like, oh, this is changing her life because she's found someone positive to roll her. There hasn't been a sort of build. And it comes down to the writing, and perhaps it comes down to the performance. I mean, which is strange, because obviously off screen they seem to get along like a house on fire. But that doesn't, I don't think necessarily translates on screen the same. Don't hate me. Well, you can.
You're right. I mean, having seen them at Comic-Con together, they are genuine. They are like best friends. They're very, very close. I just wish there had been more of a more, like you say, more of a build up to this, and then it would be more impactful. That scene when they were on the beach, if there had been proper groundwork put into it, could have been a really sort of dramatic point. But it just felt like, oh, we're going into the finale, and we're going to have to end our relationship. So I'm going to just put the mockers on it now. Let's just stay. And yeah, that line about staying in the moment, in the present, fair enough, but there needed to be a lot of emotional groundwork gone into until you got to that point for that to have an impact, for that to be a powerful moment for the Doctor.
Yeah, I agree. The slow build through the years. This should have been really set in motion as a story, or as an arc through this era. Should really have been set going literally from the get-go, with a sort of a setup to deliver to what we ended up with in sort of this episode, and potentially what may come yet in the special.
I mean, look at that heartbreaking scene in School Reunion where Sarah Jane's with the Doctor. She's like, I got old. That is the heartbreak, where you feel actually she did have that thing that she felt that her and the Doctor were, you know, it doesn't even have to be a sexual thing. It doesn't have to be, she felt that was their bond for life. And that, you know, she's lived her life as a result of that, feeling that. And that's, you know, I mean, School Reunion's a bit of a bloodfest from the start, isn't it? But that is another one of those sort of really sad elements to it, and because it's so beautifully done. And again, you know, is that because that's David and Liz know how to do that and they can perform? I don't know. It's just a shame. I just think you have to invest somewhat to be able to pay off with that. And that scene at the end of the beach, you should have had quite a chaotic, action-packed episode, and then the calm of just being sat by the sea. And even if you weren't overtly discussing it, I mean, you can write things so much more intelligently, where you're not directly saying, I want to go out with you, Doctor Who, I can't go out with you. You can do it in a much more oblique way, where you're just discussing what, you know, what if you connect with someone. You can do it so sort of third person. And then you could do your stone, and then that can be your end shot. And it's just do it so much better. It just feels like it's kind of like, you're lucky you're getting what you're getting. It's like, well, are we? I mean, that is what we had in the thing, isn't it? You're lucky you're getting what you're getting because it's been difficult to do for the last few years. Well, you know, I'm not going to go and build a house because I can't build a house. So don't just give me a pile of bricks and say, be lucky what you live in. It's kind of like you either do it properly or don't.
True.
Ben, what do you think?
Well, putting aside the shoehorn lesbianism for a moment, I would like to discuss a few other aspects of the plot, which, right, for starters, there's a bit with the Sea Devil where the Sea Devil can suddenly leap up into the ship like Superman. What's that all about? As the Sea Devil suddenly become like, you remember the Cybermen, where the Cybermen could suddenly just leap up, and you know, having never been able to do that before, or the Master bouncing about and stuff. I don't quite get how that can work. And
that's the gravity thing, you know, where they're skimming the stones and the stones fly off.
Okay.
What is that for then?
All I can remember them is the way they shuffled along the beach in the Sea Devils back in the 70s.
But does this also explain the bits on the ship where Ji-Hung is trapped in that thing, and then you know, the Sea Devils, the main Sea Devil says to the Doctor, right now, Doctor, any last words and this sort of thing, and she says, oh yes, sir. Even though a moment ago there were lots of Sea Devils about working various machines and stuff, and they're all buggered off by that point. So then all of a sudden, you know, the next shot is them doing their Geronimo jumping down. Is this magnetic thing that allows them to Geronimo down onto the ship with Ji-Hung? We don't know how they got him out. He's just suddenly there with them, and then they go, oh, hello, this is my crew, la 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 la. And then the Sea Devil comes down, you know, he appears in the mist with his sort of teleport thing, where he can go back and forth, back and forth. So like Jason Voorhees, you know, where he's about to kill someone and they run away from him. They run down a corridor, around the open a door, and he's there. So the Sea Devil can sort of do that, like, oh, I can appear wherever I want at will. And the thing is, and then what happens is afterwards, then the Doctor and Yaz are able, no, sorry, just the Doctor is able to leap back up onto the ship again and have a chat with the Sea Devil. So is this magnetic thing? Is this how it works again, that they're able to bounce about all over the place? please explain to me how.
She gets to say Geronimo twice. I mean,
exactly. But is this how this works? So they can skim stones on the beach, and they can also bounce about from ship to ship.
Well, it looked very good visually.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. It looked very good visually.
The sea floor disappeared and all that stuff. That was a little bit.
The monster came up, didn't it? What we thought was going to be Merca, which sadly wasn't the Merca.
Oh, everyone had convinced themselves that was going to be the Merca.
No. The Sea Devil said it was called the Wu Shen. So is that Chinese for Merca? Do you think? Is it so someone translated that? And at the end, the Merca then disappears. We don't see it anymore. So is that going to be the equivalent of their Loch Ness monster swimming about the ocean, or is it left there? What happened to it?
Because did it swallow the TARDIS or not?
No, it just got it gripped in its teeth.
It got it gripped in its teeth and then took it to the water.
It just bit it.
I'm sure the TARDIS can disappear though, can't it?
Well, yeah, the TARDIS can now hop back to, from 1807 back several centuries without any problems at all. It's no longer this sort of thing. Oh, the TARDIS, we don't know where we're going. The Doctor can just go, oh, here we go, hop back.
But it was drawn off course and landed on the beach.
Well,
was it drawn off course by the magic stone, which had kept one of the Sea Devils locked in concrete for 200 years for no discernible reason?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I mean, I'm crying out for the days where it was just the Master stood in a field pretending to be a scarecrow that drew the TARDIS off. At least it was batshit crazy, but it was a little bit more believable.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to give Jodie like 20 minutes of pure dialogue, at least explain how some of this stuff actually happened.
And 20 minutes of that flipping screwdriver that cannot go quick enough.
I do hope that is.
They need to get rid of it. They really do. She just waves it about like a bloody magician, abracadabra all the time, and it's just like
3 times in the first 60 seconds. It's like, oh, where are we? Oh yeah, and then the earring goes, and then she zaps the earring, and then she goes like 3 times.
I know.
They haven't even started.
And then uses it to deflect the Sea Devil's sword when they're having their COVID fight, and it's like, I don't know.
The not Merca reminded me of the thing in Star Wars when the Millennium Falcon's inside and it comes down, it tries to eat it. I thought that was very reminiscent.
Yeah. The space slug. Yes.
They've certainly given the art department an opportunity to shine here, haven't they, in this episode? They've said, have some budget. Let's have something that looks pretty epic on screen, but actually brings nothing really to the storyline other than to capture the TARDIS in some respects.
Yeah. Now, the main Sea Devil, it speaks, right? Obviously, the mouth that doesn't quite move. You see these gills sort of like vibrating a lot when speaking. Yeah. Now, that one's speaking. The others are all mute, right? Obviously, we have to pay for them otherwise. So is that just because that amulet is flashing? Is it? You're right, Jason.
I'm just loving your description of this. Is amazing.
Is that why have they now asked their Silurian cousins, how can we speak? I know, like in Warriors of the Deep, where the Silurians are suddenly like, hello, Doctor, how are you today? So now the Sea Devils have adopted that. They thought that's a good way we can speak. We don't have to, do this other thing anymore, do we?
Can I just say one good thing though? And I know most everything else. I liked it when the Sea Devil died. You got the cry, which was the original cry of a Sea Devil dying.
Like that.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah, there were a couple when they were in the scrap, weren't they? When they were doing the sword fight as well, there were a couple of Sea Devil yelps.
Yeah.
Yes. That was good. I like that.
But well done, Brian.
Oh, speaking of which, did you see in the credits, John Freelander got a credit to say for the Masters up. Malcolm Hulke misspelt.
I can't believe it.
No, I know. And we were talking about Di earlier. She's not even on the credits.
They wanted that to be a big surprise. It was a big reveal. It's like the Master coming back. They're like, oh, Di's on the phone.
Oh my God, Di's back. That woman who was so horrible and mean to him at the end of
was gonna say.
off, Dan, I don't want you anymore. And then suddenly like, oh, Di, I miss you so much. It's like,
People are going to die in the centenary when there's a deep faked Auntie Vanessa voiced by Nick Briggs. They'll be like, oh my God, Auntie Vanessa's back.
oh, can you imagine?
Yeah, on a positive, I'm going to say that, it's not even related to the fact that he's coming to a Phantom soon, but I thought that Marlowe gave one of the best performances in this because he had such an energy and such a sparkle. He looked interesting on screen. He looked like he was having, and it's that kind of thing of, oh, actually, you actually make a good companion here. You could have quite an interesting activity with someone who's quite bright and quite, watchable. And it seems a shame that even within the story, he didn't really have much to do. It's just a couple of sort of comedy scenes really with Dan. And I know a lot of people like Dan, and I'm sure John Bishop is a lovely person. I know lots of lovely people. I wouldn't want them to do dentistry on me or surgery. I don't know whether being a lovely person makes you an actor. And I think Dan just doing he does a lot of this, doesn't he? Doctor Who, where we landed today then? It's like, open your mouth, express something, go wild. And I think Dan's a bit smoke and mirrors because he has the odd funny line in it which just lifts the mood because he's been dying for the last 20 minutes. But I don't think he's necessarily that great.
Yeah. Have you also noticed that they've toned it down quite a bit for this episode? Did you notice whenever anyone was killed, you didn't actually see anything? It was also off screen. Like even when the main the Sea Devil was stabbed at the end, you didn't sort of see anything. It was all, and even when they were doing the villagers, it was sort of like a sword went whoosh, and you just saw someone on the ground. It's like, are they trying to be like, oh, kiddies are watching, so we mustn't make it too violent. We must, it's a bit different from Warriors of the Deep with the green slime coming out of their eyes and stuff.
Oh, come on. They put Watership down on most bank holiday weekends. I mean, that's brutal. I mean, the way that Dan dispatched basically about 12 sea devils, literally just by swinging his sword, they all fell over. It was like, okay. I mean, I thought the village scene at the beginning was, to open it with a sea devil slaughtering an entire village, I thought was, quite a bold move. But like you say, you don't really see, you just see shots of the sea devil swinging his sword and then people falling over. There's one guy I think you see with the infection starting to sort of appear on him. But you're right, it was very sort of toned down. It was like, okay, we've just slaughtered an entire village, but you never actually saw any of the deaths happen. And again, that first scene, the first sort of cutaway when you go into the titles where the guy's lying on the floor, and again you just see the sword raised. You know what's happened, but you don't actually see anything.
Two points here to raise from that. Okay, first point, I think if the Sea Devil went on a massacre of the village and he managed to miss Ying, who'd got the thing around his neck, the one thing he was looking for the next 45 minutes, it's kind of like, mate, you should have a little bit of a harder look. And the second is, I still think the theme tune is just rubbish, really. Insofar as, when he raised the sword to kill the guy and you have that sort of cry, if that got into a sting of a and into the adventure, whereas it does that, and then there's it's like your dynamic of the cliffhanger of the kind of part one pre-credits, it comes with the bam and into it rather than that horrible title sequence. It just looks like someone's put dye into a fish tank. It's bloody it's just that's my Sea Devil. It's kind of like, come on, you could do it so much better. It's like there's no love in it, and I think that's probably what offends me most. There's a sort of, it just feels unloved, and just like there's no one going the extra mile to make it better. On a positive, I do think Ray's costumes are still really good. I think he's done a great job throughout the run, and I think not just the regulars all look great. The guest cast, great design work. I think the Sea Devils all look beautiful. I think there's nice costume. sort of a happy medium, I suppose, between string vest and the sort of the full samurai thing. I did wonder, was this whole episode just to explain why they went from Seafort string vests to samurai on the sea base? Was it just go like they were sort of Madame Ching influenced or something? I don't know whether that was what the whole point of this story was.
Just the evolution of the costume.
Yeah, the design history of the Sea Devils. Like, we don't do spring vests anymore. That is so 1970s. We're all over the samurai retro.
There's still a hint of it though. I really like the concept of the Sea Devils. And like I say, I hope they bring them back. I thought Jodie's costume was really good. Amandip as well. But they must have, John Bishop must have gone, am I doing Panto this week? What am I in a different show? Because he just got this pirate outfit. But no, production-wise, you know, this season, through the flux, through, you know, it has been really good. The creative people bringing it to the screen, great. It's just what they've got to work with to bring to the screen is the issue.
Yeah, it comes
nice to see that they can have their own Legopolis moment in this one as well, opening the doors underwater, and this time it works with their gravity bubble or whatever they called it. So
in Legopolis, they wanted to flood it, didn't they?
yeah.
I mean, we talk about Chibnall's rising, but Bidmead was like, yeah, let's flood the TARDIS to get rid of the Master. That's a great plan. He said about Legopolis, I know some people scored it very tardily.
Ooh.
Ooh, I can't remember who.
It wouldn't have been me, obviously.
No, not at all.
So, Doctor Who and the Legend of the Sea Devils, I think we're almost at the pinnacle here. Do you think, having made it through Legend of the Sea Devils, do you feel now that the going forward it's going to be something that we're looking forward to the next one for the finale, or are we now, having liked the notion of the Sea Devils in the trailer, are we now super wary that this could all just end up in a great big puddle at the end of the year?
Yeah, it's worrying, I think, because you know, we've got lots of we looked forward to this when we did the preview of the clip, and you know, I think I said at the time, you know, I'll go into this with an open mind because I wasn't a big fan of Flux, and I was hoping that this might just have been a slight change in direction, particularly as we've now come down to specials and we're not in full series. Unfortunately, the delivery of the promise last night was quite weak. And therefore, I can now only assume that however many of our previous cast and monsters come back to fill the slot for the Centennial Special, I am left with a slight sense of foreboding that, unfortunately, until we hand over the reins to the new production team, I feel that we are going to be underchanged once again when we get to the special.
Yeah, I think it's a case of trepidation, really, isn't it? It's now worry after seeing this one that they're going to sort of bugger it up, perhaps. Who knows? It's going to be very, very difficult to. I mean, it's difficult to please everyone all the time, isn't it? Some people are very. You know, I've seen lots of people saying, "Oh, Legend of the Sea Devils was wonderful, wonderful." You know, that they loved it. So, I mean, it's just it's down to personal taste, isn't it? And I think it also really depends on a lot of the nostalgia factor, because of the fact that obviously Sea Devils are back, and now we've got Tegan and Ace back, and various other characters from recent Who as well. So it's just a case of, please, you know, let it be good and not bogged down by all this mad exposition and impossible to follow plot, you know. So hopefully,
I think yes, I am wary, because I, like you say, I think there's more to come, more to be released about what is going to be in the Centennial. if there's one thing I'm hopeful about, is that there is some sort of collaboration going on with Russell T Davies already, so that we start to put some building blocks in for when it comes back. Because when it comes back, it's the 60th. So if you're throwing everything, you know, old companions and everything else at the final of the Jodie one, are you then going to do a nostalgia fest for the 60th? I wouldn't have thought so. So I kind of hope that at some point they've got together and gone, right, you know, how are we going to mark the 60th? How are we going to mark the centennial? Well, let's put, you know, all of our eggs in this basket and then have something completely brand new for the 60th, which doesn't rely on lots of old characters or nods to the past. Let's try and take the show forward. So in my head at the moment, that's what I'm kind of hoping is going on. But
that's my sorry, James.
Go on.
I was going to say, and that's my view. I think we're going to get the all singing, all dancing, bring everybody back finale to Jodie's era. I think the 60th for us marks the relaunch of potentially what the series will become, and therefore doesn't necessarily need a big special in the way that we've come to know big specials. Because, you know, I think we've talked about this on a couple of our other reviews. You know, the 3 Doctors was great. The 5 Doctors was a great idea. The 2 Doctors, we were starting to stretch a little bit of credibility at that point. You know, do we always need returning Doctors? Do we always need these big all singing and dancing stories just to celebrate the anniversary of the show? Great, the setup was there in the past, but let's try something new. Let's try some new ideas here to try and, you know, give us something a little bit different for the future.
And you're never going to better Dimensions in Time.
I remember what I scored that.
I'm not even joking. It is literally the greatest Doctor Who story ever. It's funny because two thoughts. I remember, obviously, not so long ago, we had Captain Jack back, didn't we, for a Dalek special? Mm. And that was a poorly written return that didn't pay off. He if he'd have not been in it, would have made absolutely no difference to the setup. So again, that's another sort of like a little alarm bell at the back. Goes, oh, I don't know how well he handles returning characters beyond the publicity shot where everyone goes, whoa, I don't know. And the second thought that just sort of, you know, just to go out on here is that having a small cast and having a COVID thing, I think is a very easy hide behind, insofar as if you look at something like Horror Fang Rock has got a tiny cast, a tiny set, and it is so beautifully atmospheric. It is so cleverly done. I don't know to what extent it's a cop-out to say we were limited in what we could do. I think you could, I'm not saying go to a lighthouse, but you can go to an isolated farmhouse. You can go on you could have done this story in a small fishing village with a handful of people and the sea. I just think the potential of just going, well, we wanted to do Pirates of the Caribbean, but COVID struck, so we had a lack of seamen. You know, it's kind of like, it's just, I don't know. It's it just feels to me wasted opportunities. And that's a positive thought for you. If I say negative things with a smile. I could be a doctor, I could just break the bad news. You're dying. See? It's better if someone smiles. Dolly Parton says, if you see someone without a smile, give them yours.
You just
Not
look
literally.
like the chief clown there in Greatest Show.
Lee said about that. Right. So, I think I know what the answer is going to be here. For the panel at hand, was Legend of the Sea Devils a hit, a miss, or a maybe?
Okay, I'll go first. Because somebody's got to go first, and it might as well be me on this occasion. Okay, the story was just simply underwhelming, frankly. And it had great promise. And I thought, you know, we might have just seen a turn here, but it didn't. In fact, I think if anything, we've taken a turn even more in the wrong direction. There were some isolated bits in this that were really good. I thought the pre-credit piece was good. The costume design for the Sea Devils. In fact, actually the costuming in general was really good in this. I think that, you know, there are a couple of standout moments, but it does not make the episode. I think the editing lets it down, the scripting's letting it down, and therefore, unfortunately for me, it can be nothing other than a big miss this time out, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, it's very difficult for me to say something different. You've sort of pretty much summed it up, Jason. What I thought, again, as you said, editing, scripting, so forth. It was like we thought when we reviewed the trailer, we thought, oh, this has promise, this has potential, it looks really good, and it did still look really good. As I said, Ray Holman did a great job on the costumes. The Sea Devils look really good, but essentially it was really let down by bad editing, jumping all over the place, lots of exposition, not really any story, and basically a bit boring, really. I just found myself quite bored through a lot of it, and I just thought, this isn't really engaging with me. So unfortunately for me, it is a miss.
I find this really frustrating because it's a bank holiday store. You know, it's an Easter weekend. You want to be going out with an amazing story. You're bringing back the Sea Devils. The trailer looked beautiful, and then you end up with this, which at times feels like they actually filmed it in isolation from each other. There are scenes where, you know, there's characters talking, and I don't actually believe they're there together. I think they've just been filmed in different parts and cobbled together, and that's why we get these whole sequences that don't seem to sort of lay flat against each other. It really is distracting, and I was so, up until the sort of opening credits, I was like, okay, maybe this isn't going to be, you know, as bad as maybe I thought it was going to be. And then it was, and unfortunately it was worse than I expected it to be, because as someone who loves the Sea Devils, and please don't get me wrong, you know, they're in Warriors of the Deep, they look like they're wearing full nappies and sort of like walking in a really weird way, and you know, they're not always given the look that they should have. Yeah, the head that sort of lolls off halfway through an episode. To bring them back, to make them look that gorgeous, and then put them in this dross, sorry, no.
That's 3 thumbs down, which when I put my thumb up in a second is going to make me look like the hero.
Right.
I'm going to misquote Romana in the Reboss operation and say that I was almost willing to be impressed before I saw this. And having seen it, it's like, you know, it's a shame, isn't it? Yeah, just wasted potential. There's so much creatively that looks great in Cedo, but it is another sad face with a smile. It's a thumbs down.
Easier.
It's so sad because I know, you know, I've seen a lot of people that said they enjoyed it, and that's great. But for me, I came away more frustrated.
Yeah.
And that annoys me because everything that was there should have played so well together, and it just didn't.
You know, I mean, if you looked at social media over the course of the last week as well, you know, the expectation and the anticipation of this story has been building and building and building, and, you know, counting the hours down, counting the minutes down. You count the hours down to something that is that poorly produced ultimately. It must be, you know, we can't be the only people that are disappointed by this, you know, and I think you're letting the fans down. I don't think you're doing the fans the service that you need to give them when you've got such poor scripting, such bad editing, and, you know, you tease and promise, you know, that this is going to be the next best thing, and it turns out not to be. And you know what, you know, we'll be lucky if we've got an army of fans to go into the new world with the new production team, because quite honestly, you know, I can see people just losing interest in this before we get to the Centennial special.
It's interesting that the lead up to this, everyone was just sharing the pictures of the Sea Devils. They were so excited to see the old Sea Devil design back in the new episode. And already, as soon as this episode finished, I didn't see a lot of people talking about the episode. I did not see a lot of reaction or review of the episode. It was all Tegan and Ace pictures. Tegan and Ace are going to be the next one. So the reaction to the last special wasn't a reaction to what the actual content of the episode was. It was, look, the Sea Devils are back and they look like they did in 1972. And it's almost like a sort of, it's like a dog trick, isn't it? We go, here, that was rubbish, but look at this, go fetch. And it's kind of like, it's a trick, isn't it? You're hiding what wasn't great. And, I will say, and I know sometimes, things get heated in these conversations, or comment on it, is that not liking something doesn't mean that someone else can't like it. And I always think that there's a strange world that we exist in now where if you say, I think Legend of the Sea Devils was a pile of poo, that someone has to come and tell you that you can't think that's true because of this, or this. Or you can't say it's great because you can like and dislike. I know I'm not going on my preachy, Jesus channel here, but I think liking something isn't an automatic attack on someone who doesn't like it and vice versa. And so I think we've generally been quite scathing about the quality of it. But if someone does like it, that doesn't make them a bad person. I don't know what they're liking in it, but I wouldn't attack someone for liking it.
No, and I would absolutely agree. And I mean, I came into this really wanting to like it. I love the look of the Sea Devils, the clips that we had leading into this, the promise that this could have delivered. And had I come out and watched that, as I enjoyed Eva the Daleks, not having enjoyed Flux. And I would quite honestly come here today, and if I thought that I'd enjoyed what I'd seen and it had made sense and it was a great production, I'd be, it would be a thumbs up here. I think we're all entitled to our own opinions, and you're right. No one should take or force opinions on others. That's quite right. These are our opinions, and that's the way we are. We don't. None of this is preordained. We're coming and telling you what we think of the story. But I so wanted to like it. And I think that's part of my disappointment, is that it was such a letdown after wanting it to be so good.
Yeah, because you see a lot of stuff online at the moment. I'm reading that last couple of days that a lot of people going, "Oh, you're hating it because you're a Chibnall hater. You hate all the stuff." It's like, no, it's just as you all said. It's just because it was a lot of build up and then big disappointment, and that's the thing. I'm not hating it because of Chibnall or whatever. If he does a good job, he does a good job. I'm watching it for the content, and I want it to entertain me and to make sense and to be a good program. I'm not doing it just because I don't like his error. No, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, it has been a disappointment, and I'm really sorry about that, because I really wanted it to entertain me. I really wanted it to be good, and I was really hoping, but unfortunately, it just didn't. So, and it does worry me for the next one now. That's the problem.
I think I share that frustration with this episode, and I with Flux, I was probably the more positive one out of all of us for the Flux, and I always try and find, the bits that I like about it, because it's still Doctor Who, and for me, it's important that Doctor Who, carries on and evolves and changes. And this era might not be the era that I love, but there will be another era, and there'll be another era, and there'll be another era, and people fall out of love with Doctor Who and fall back in love with Doctor Who. And at some point, everybody has their first Doctor, and having seen, people's reaction to seeing Jodie and everyone dressed up as Jodie, I can see that, and I entirely appreciate that. And I read a mixture of comments yesterday, and I rewatched it again this morning in the hope that, don't look so shocked. I do my research. I watched it twice just to sort of see.
I did as well.
Yeah.
There's me thinking you would have read the synopsis.
There's no hardback for this one, Jason. I couldn't do what you do.
Rude.
I know. I went into it again this morning with that sense of frustration, thinking, will I feel differently at the end of it? And I'll be honest, I didn't, and it's because I really wanted it to be a lot better than it was. That's the frustration for me, is, you know, and if people watched it and, you know, some people were saying, oh, it's the best episode I've seen. Great. I love that. And I'm sure there are episodes that I've watched that I think are a 10 out of 10, and other people go, what is he talking about? That's awful. That's what Doctor Who's about. Everybody, you know, they like different things. But I just think if you, like I say, if you're going to market it, you're going to put it out on a bank holiday weekend, you're going to say, I've brought back these brilliant, you know, Sea Devils, make it decent.
Watched it twice. It's like putting your hand in a stinging nettle nest, pulling it out because it hurts, then putting it in again to see if it still hurts. It's like, it's amazing. Anyway, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining on the Legend of the Sea Devils review.
A pleasure, as always.
Thank you very much.
Yep, thank you very much.
And don't forget, and I've done this at the wrong point because I should do it at the start, to like and subscribe. I know there's a lot of you out there that aren't subscribing to this. Subscribe to this and we'll pollute your inboxes or something, I guess. So anyway, bye-bye. See you soon.